You stand up to get a glass of water, and you hear it before you see it, the soft thud of paws hitting the floor. By the time you reach the kitchen, your dog is already there, sitting at your feet, watching you, as if the entire point of the evening was this short walk down the hallway. You didn't call, you didn't pat your leg or say a word, and yet here they are, ready to keep you company for a trip that will last about 40 seconds, there and back. Most of us have a quick explanation ready for this. He just loves me. She's my little shadow. And there is real truth in that, more than you might expect. But the honest answer is stranger, and a good deal more interesting, because that same behavior, the following, the waiting, the settling nearby, can mean three completely different things. Sometimes it can mean all three at once. And the difference between them isn't hidden. It's written all over your dog's body, in plain sight, if you know where to look. So let's start with the question that quietly follows almost every dog owner from room to room. Why does your dog follow you everywhere? To really answer it, we have to travel back much further than your living room. Long before dogs slept on our beds and waited by our doors, their ancestors were wolves. And a wolf, for all its intelligence and all its social life within the pack, does not look to a human for reassurance. Even a wolf raised by people from the time it opens its eyes tends to stay independent. It solves problems on its own. When something is difficult or frightening, it doesn't turn around to check a human face for an answer. It simply deals with the world directly. Somewhere across many thousands of years of living alongside us, something in that wiring changed.
Domestication didn't only make dogs tamer or friendlier, it quietly rewired what they pay attention to. Where a wolf's attention flows outward, to the world, to the hunt, to the pack, a dog's attention keeps flowing back to us. Researchers who have studied this closely find the difference again and again. Give a dog and a wolf the same impossible task, a container of food they can't open, and the two animals behave very differently. The wolf keeps working at the problem alone. The dog, after a moment, stops and looks up at the nearest human, as if to ask. That glance, that turning back toward a person, is one of the quiet signatures of what it means to be a dog. Some scientists have even followed this thread down into the genome. They found that the intense, open sociability so many dogs show toward people is linked to variation in a region of dog DNA that, in humans, is associated with an unusually warm and trusting temperament. It's still an active area of research, and the full picture is far from settled, but the direction is clear enough. The pull toward people, the impulse to move closer and stay close, may be woven into what a dog fundamentally is. Following isn't a quirk of your particular dog. In some deep sense, it's part of the bargain our two species struck a very long time ago. But that's the ancient history, and it doesn't yet explain what's happening tonight in your hallway with this dog. For that, we need to talk about some.
They would watch how an infant behaved in an unfamiliar room, first with the parent present, then when the parent quietly left, and then again when the parent returned. From those moments, they could read the shape of the attachment between them. And these researchers wondered, what would happen if we ran a version of that same test, but with dogs and their owners? So they did. They brought dogs into an unfamiliar room, with the owner there, then absent, then returning, and they watched. And the pattern that emerged was striking because it looked so familiar. With their owner in the room, the dogs were braver. They explored more of the space. They played more freely. They seemed, in a word, more secure. When the owner slipped away, many dogs grew subdued and watchful. And when the owner came back, the dogs greeted them in a way they never greeted the stranger who had been sitting quietly in the same room the whole time. That's the heart of it. For many dogs, you are not simply pleasant company. You are what researchers call a secure base, a steady point they can venture out from and return to, the way a small child keeps drifting back to a parent's knee before setting off to explore again. And following you around the house is one of the simplest, most direct ways a dog has of keeping that secure base close. There's even a quiet chemistry underneath it. When a dog and the person it's bonded to look at each other and really hold that gaze, something measurable happens in both of them. A hormone associated with bonding, the very same one that rises between a mother and her newborn, climbs on both sides of that look. It rises in the dog, it rises in the person.
A small loop of connection, running back and forth between two species that will never share a single spoken word. So when your dog pads after you into a room, then just sits and gazes up at you,
Something real may be passing between you in that silence. Not a thought in words, but something. All of which makes it very tempting to close the case right here, warmly and neatly. Following is love. More following, more love. But this is exactly the moment we have to slow down, because that tidy little equation can quietly lead us astray, and it can even cause us to miss something our dog is trying to tell us. Here is the part that's easy to overlook. Following, all by itself, is just movement. It tells you that a dog wants to be near you. It does not, on its own, tell you why. And there are at least 3 very different reasons hiding underneath the same set of footsteps. The first is the one we've been describing, a calm, secure bond. And you can recognize it if you watch the body rather than the feet. The movement is loose and unhurried, an easy swing to it. The eyes are soft, the gaze gentle rather than fixed. The mouth is relaxed, often slightly open. And here's the real tell. When you finally sit down, this dog sits down too, lets out a long breath, and melts into rest. It settles. It can even take itself off for a nap in the next room, perfectly content, because it isn't anxious about the distance. This kind of dog can also break away and come back. It'll stop to investigate an interesting smell, fall behind, then catch up in its own good time.
Stop and think for a moment about everything that following you has predicted over your dog's entire life. Walks begin with you standing up. Meals begin with you walking to the kitchen. Doors open because you approach them. Treats appear from your hands. Attention, play, the leash, the car, the good things of a dog's day, nearly all of them start with you moving, and with your dog moving toward you. To a dog, you are the source of almost everything that matters, and a behavior that reliably leads to good outcomes thousands of times over becomes deeply, automatically strong. So a great deal of everyday following is simply a beautifully practiced habit. Watch closely and you'll catch it in the act. The following that switches on the instant you drift toward the kitchen and switches straight off the moment the food does or doesn't appear. That dog wasn't seeking your company. It was placing a very reasonable bet. And the third reason is the one that matters most of all, because it's the one we're most likely to miss when we're busy being flattered by all that devotion. Sometimes following isn't about closeness at all. Sometimes it's about worry. This is where reading the body really counts and where it can change everything. An anxious dog doesn't follow with that loose, easy walk. It hovers. It struggles to settle even when you're sitting perfectly still, getting up, circling, lying down, getting up again. You might notice panting when the room isn't warm and nothing has been exerting, a lot of lip licking, yawns that come out of nowhere in a calm moment, a tight face, a low or stiff tail, a body carried a little lower than usual, and most telling of all, this dog often can't be left in another room at all. The distance itself is the problem.
When you move toward the door, the tension climbs before you've even reached it. The keys, the shoes, the coat off its hook, each one tightens something in the dog, because each one predicts the thing it dreads, which is being left alone. That is not a dog savoring your company. That is a dog struggling with your absence, sometimes long before the absence even arrives. And it's crucial to say clearly, this is not disobedience, and it is certainly not the dog being dramatic or spoiled or manipulative. There's no scheming in it. It's genuine distress, and it deserves genuine kindness, not correction. If that's the pattern you recognize, the following that tighten together with real panic about being alone, then the most caring next step isn't a quick training trick pulled from a video. It's a conversation with your veterinarian or with a qualified behavior professional, someone who can look at the whole picture in context. Because the causes vary. Some are emotional and can be gently worked with over time. Others are physical. And here's something many owners don't realize. When an older dog suddenly becomes clingy, when a dog who is always independent starts shadowing you out of nowhere, the reason can lie in the body rather than the heart. Fading eyesight or hearing can make a familiar person feel like the safest anchor in a world that's growing dim and quiet. Pain can make a dog want to stay close. An aging mind can lose some of its old certainty about where things are and how the day unfolds. None of that is something to diagnose from the sofa or to guess at. It's something to have checked with care. So the same behavior, The following, the shadowing, the waiting by the door can be the sign of a secure heart.
And in a real dog, on a real ordinary evening, it's very often some shifting blend of all three, leaning one way in the kitchen and another way at bedtime, changing with the day. It's worth adding, too, that no two dogs wear this the same way. Some breeds were shaped over generations for close, constant cooperation with people, working shoulder to shoulder with us all day, and many of them do tend, on average, toward more shadowing. But averages are not individuals. The dog in front of you is not a breed. Its own temperament, its early life, the particular history it has lived with you, all of these predict its following far better than any label on a chart. A so-called Velcro breed can have an easygoing, independent soul. A breed with a reputation for aloofness can produce the most devoted shadow you've ever met. Watch the dog you actually have, not the one the stereotype describes. And notice as well how much the setting can change the meaning. A dog that follows calmly through a familiar home is telling you one thing. That very same dog pressed close to your leg in a brand new house that still smells of strangers, or in a busy place full of unfamiliar sounds, is telling you something else. In those moments, the following isn't habit and it isn't simple contentment. It's safety-seeking. You've become the one steady, known thing in a world that suddenly isn't. Context can quietly flip the meaning of exactly the same footsteps. Which brings us, at last, back to your hallway and that 40-second walk to the kitchen. Notice now that you were never really watching the following at all. You were watching the footsteps and then filling in the rest of the story from a... But the real story was living in all the parts you skimmed past without a second look. The looseness or the tightness in the body, the softness or the hardness in the eyes, whether your dog could sigh and truly settle once you stopped or couldn't quite come to rest, whether it was seeking you or seeking safety or simply, sensibly expecting dinner. All of that was there, the whole time, and none of it needed a single word to be spoken. And here's the thing worth holding on to. None of this makes the love any less real. If anything, it makes it more so, because it asks something of you in return. It asks you to actually look, to notice which dog is behind the footsteps tonight, and to answer that dog rather than the story you assumed. A dog cannot sit you down and explain in words why it needs to be near you in this particular moment, but it is explaining, constantly, patiently, in the set of its ears and the swing of its tail, in the ease or the unease that lives in its body, every single time it rises to follow you across a room. They have been telling us all along, in the only language they have. We simply have to learn how to watch. And once you do, that small, ordinary moment, the pause on the floor, the shadow at your heels, the quiet company on the way to the kitchen, will never look quite so ordinary again.